In 5th edition, players are pretty much unstoppable. Until they're not. Because of this, they tend to go about monster hunting quests by charging right in the front door, spells blazing. If this doesn't sound like a monster hunter quest to you, then that's because it definitely does not fit the usual framework. Today we're going to flip the script and I'll teach you a 4-step framework that'll keep the barbarian's head down until it's go time. Let's get to it. The 4 stages of a monster hunt, and thus the 4 steps that your characters are going to be taking in order to engage in a true monster hunt like the kinds of tropes that we expect from these great stories, are the discovery, research, hunting, and slaying the monster, whatever it may be. In 5th edition, we typically just skip straight from the first step to the last step, maybe with a little bit of third in the middle as we throw a survival check to find where its lair is, but we almost never engage in research, and I suppose that's why that makes it this finger, as that's what we're pretty much getting from that. I'm not gonna put that in, that's messed up. Pretty typical to just skip past a lot of the important pieces that make a monster hunt feel like a monster hunt instead of just like a typical raid into some random dungeon. So let's break it down into its 4 steps and dive right in with discovery. This is part of the monster hunt trope that Dungeons & Dragons honestly does really, really well. We're used to gaining quests from NPCs or from the world around us that tell us what we need to go and do, or give us the option of something that we can choose to go and do. In the case of a monster hunt, that could be a quest giver that was just asking us to do it because of some form of reward or need. It could be a survivor that tells us about the creature and what happened to them and piques the interests of the players in hunting down the creature. It could be an encounter with the creature itself, or a rumor of the creature's existence that they overhear at the local watering hole. It could be the tracks or sign of the creature that's been left behind in the world for your players to discover. It could be a sighting of the creature from afar off. All of these are ways for your players to discover that the monster exists, but one thing that we need to focus on if we want to create a monster hunt in these quest-giving situations is that the players feel like this creature is a grave threat that is interesting to them, but perhaps has some signs that they might be out of our league. Creating a monster hunter theme to an entire campaign could allow you to help players to realize this in session 0, but if you're looking to insert a monster hunt into an existing campaign, you're going to have to foreshadow more heavily in the discovery stage the power level and the need for the next step. When it comes to the research stage, it's important, if we want this stage to exist in our monster hunt, for there to be a reason for the players to do that research. By creating an imbalance of power to where the players are perhaps a little more nervous than usual about trying to fight this foe, we encourage them to start looking about in the world for opportunities. And so what it boils down to is giving them not only a desire to find out the information, but readily available sources that can give them the opportunity to go about that process. And how can they go about it? Obviously, there could be simple libraries or other monster hunting experts around that they could talk to, but just like in my musing video about monster knowledge checks, there could be information that is gated behind specific ways of gathering that information, which could even be a quest all on its own. And of course, by giving it a quest of its own, that's one way that we can make it fun for the players to engage in the research section. We want them to enjoy themselves throughout the entirety of the monster hunt, and frankly, going to the local library and rolling a single dice to see whether you succeed or fail is a pretty lackluster experience from the player side. Instead, making it a quest all on its own, either to appease and encourage the NPC or the organization that you need the information from, or as some kind of requirement that those NPCs or sources need in order for you to be able to discover the information. Perhaps you need to take a full sketch of the beast at some point while it's sleeping without alerting it. Perhaps you need a sample of one of its victims so you can extract the venom venom from their veins and correctly identify the kind of poison that it utilizes. It could be an opportunity just for a player to flex some of their own features or skills. Sage background, anyone? Pointing you to the correct library that you're looking for the knowledge that you need. Speaking of having the knowledge that you need, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so that you're always armed with what you need for your game of Dungeons & Dragons. When it comes to the hunting stage of a monster hunt, we typically tend to gloss over a lot of the journey, or else we create elaborate dungeons that involve fighting your way through the lesser minions in order to get to the final boss. And that's a load of fun and can be satisfying, but we can do better. And the best way for us to do better at making our hunts and the monster hunts as exciting as possible is to take a look at what kind of consequences there could be for failing to hunt the monster correctly. Perhaps by failing in the hunting stage, it could choose to attack others, or attack you on its own terms. It could grow more powerful, gather allies, or move to a more favorable terrain. Any of these consequences for failing at a successful hunt will increase the danger level of the slay stage, or put some kind of consequence into the world that will encourage the players to either redouble their efforts or to at least have, hopefully, some sense of guilt for the innocent lives that have been lost. Though I'm finding that guilt for imaginary people is going out of style these days. But what could a hunt look like? It might look more like a stealth mission into the lair, particularly if the monster is so powerful that it doesn't need minions in order to challenge your player characters. A successful hunt could be about placing bait or traps in the creature's hunting grounds so that you can engage it on your own terms and be ready for that all-important ambush. But of course, the most traditional way is the survival-style tracking situation, and honestly, that's probably going to be a fantasy that some of your characters might be interested in following if monster hunting is for them. But it doesn't have to be just a straight and potentially boring survival check scene that spotlights only one player. And instead of giving a yes/no or a pass/fail on a survival check, give the players information during the discovery stage that allows them to then work with context clues on a successful survival check. Tell them about the depth of the impression, the width of the toes, the number of claws, and let them work the puzzle of extrapolating back from the information that they gained earlier whether or not this is the correct trail. Put in more than one set of tracks in the forest so that they can have opportunity to perhaps mistake which creature it is that they are following at any given time. This allows you to lead into other consequences where perhaps they might hunt down the wrong beast, or to correctly make the right choices so that they can hunt down the creature's minions before having to face it in the inevitable great big battle at the end. Add consequences to their choices and allow them to choose the path that they're going to take by putting more information in there and essentially making it a puzzle. Alternatively, you could use what was once a skill challenge to allow everybody to be involved in the hunting stage. Give the party 2 or 3 rounds of hunting that require each of them to state something that they're doing to help, even if it's just staying quiet or staying on lookout. Require them to avoid a number of failures over the course of those 2 or 3 rounds of going through, and set a natural consequence for failure. Now be careful that when you are doing this, you're not actually setting this up into a complete pass-fail sort of scenario that leaves them wandering in the forest, bored, alone, and with nothing to do, but instead lean back on having some kind of a consequence that makes the situation a little bit worse than it would be. They still succeed in successfully hunting the beast, but perhaps they awaken it in the process, or it finds them while they're hunting it, or any other complication that can add tension and stakes to the situation. But finally, we get down to the fun bit of actually killing the beast. When it comes to slaying the monster, it's important that we are making the monster worth hunting, because we don't want our players to just barge in the front and face the creature as if it was any other creature. There needs to be a mechanical reason in the monster design that encourages them to choose this particular path and style of play. We want to reward them for having put in the research, and we want to encourage them to put in the effort to sneak up on the beast or to hunt it in the appropriate location. And we can do that mechanically in a number of different ways. We can increase the damage that the creature puts out to a somewhat unreasonable level to where there's a high probability of character loss, provided that we create a way for that to be avoided with special preparations. We can increase the resistances or the immunities of the monster in question and give a way for that to be overcome through specific knowledge or knowledge of a particular weakness. In this particular case, the Bear Totem Barbarian is actually a pretty cool design. What if your monster likewise goes into some sort of rage that makes it take half damage from all sources except one? That one particular source then becomes its Achilles heel and makes a huge difference in how the battle's going to go. You could give the creature a weak spot that could be targeted at disadvantage on the attack roll in order to deal double damage on whatever manages to hit that specific location, that break in the scales. You could add minor weaknesses that increase the amount of damage that's done by an extra dice whenever that kind of damage is used. You could give the creature movement options that will be shut down if they are engaged in a specific location. And generally speaking, when it comes to a monster hunt, have a larger disparity than you normally would allow between the CR of the creature and the average level of your party, and give the creature a powerful weakness so that you can have a short, tense encounter with this beast that in a single attack routine might be able to take one of the party members down, but thanks to that glaring weakness, if they've done their research, it might not get a second round of combat. If you haven't checked out my video on monster knowledge checks yet, then you should really get to it. Thanks for watching, and happy adventuring.